and gentlemen, we are starting this evening's program. Can we please be on our feet? I humbly ask that we put our mobile phones on silent. Our washrooms, we have one on the left and then another on the right. There are two entrance points. Thank you.
The President of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, past President of the Academy, Vice President, Fellows of the Academy, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President and Fellows of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Ghana's premier learned society, I warmly welcome you all to this evening's event. It is a tradition in the Academy and in most institutions of higher learning to give their newly elected members an opportunity to deliver their inaugural lectures in their areas of expertise to their colleagues and to the general public. This evening, we are privileged to have a scholar speak to us on a very topical subject. The inaugural lecture used to be an in-house program of the Academy, but because of its usefulness to our friends in academia, and indeed the general public, it was made a public lecture in 1998 and has remained so since then. I would now like to introduce to you the chairman for this evening's event, who will take over from me and introduce the speaker. Our chair is Professor KOFI OPOKU, Vice President of the Arts Section of the Academy of Arts and Sciences. Professor KOFI OPOKU is a former Dean of the University of Ghana Business School. He has quite a varied academic background: a Bachelor of Science degree in Physics, 1972, a Master of Philosophy degree in Management Science, 1975, and a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Operations, Research, and Economics, 1978, all from Yale University in the United States of America. Professor Anti has held academic positions in several universities, including Georgia Institute of Technology, Washington University in St. Louis, in the USA, University of Cologne in Germany, Pennsylvania State University, London School of Economics and Political Science, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He was the first occupant of the Unilever professorial chair in business at the University of Ghana, Legon. An outstanding scholar and researcher, Professor Nti is a member of several academic societies, including Public Choice Society, Institute for Operations, Research and Management Sciences, and the European Association of Industrial Economists. Professor Nti is an expert in the field of game theory and specialized in competition and strategy in business and economics. He is the Vice President of the Arts Section and a member of the Council of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, a member of the Presidential Advisory Council on Science, Technology and Innovation, Director of Universal Hospitals Group, Chairman of Claim Ghana Limited, and also Chairman and Managing Director of Lemon Foods Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor KOFI QUASHIGAH.
Thank you very much, Professor Henrietta. It's a pleasure to be here today to welcome all of you. President of the Academy, Vice President, Science Section, Fellows of the Academy, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and our very good students. I welcome all of you today. It's really a pleasure for me to introduce Professor KOFI QUASHIGAH. He's going to talk to us today about fidelity to constitutional values, key to national survival. It's a very introspective and deep topic that he's going to talk about today. So let me just say a few words about him so that he can give him the chair, the lentil, and let him take us on this journey. Professor KOFI QUASHIGAH is a professor at the University of Ghana School of Law, and a former dean of the school from 2008 to 2019. He has also served as the vice dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Nigeria between 1991 and 1993. His teaching and research interests include constitutional law, jurisprudence, human rights, international humanitarian law, governance, and alternative dispute resolution. He was a Fulbright scholar at the Harvard Human Rights Program between 2001 and 2002, and a MacArthur Foundation visiting scholar at the University of Wisconsin in 1992. He was adjudged and honored as the 2005 Best Teacher in the Humanities at the University of Ghana. In collaboration with Professor Obiara Okafor of the Osgood Hall Law School, Canada, he promoted and edited the classical book titled Legitimate Governance in Africa, published by Kluwer Publishers in 1999. Professor QUASHIGAH has served as Director of the Human Rights Center of the University of Ghana School of Law. He has undertaken a number of consultancies for UNICEF and others. These include UNICEF/Ministry of Education consultancy work on the legal framework for the right to pre-tertiary education in Ghana, 2001. Another study for UNICEF, Ghana on Legislative Reform Initiative, Institutional Development and Policy Changes in Favor of Children, the Ghana National Study, June-July 2004. Consultant to National Governance Program under the UNDP Consolidating Democratic Governance Program. He was contracted to write a comprehensive but concise assessment of the human rights environment to be integrated into the governance component of the country assessment on Ghana, June 2004. Research into HIV in Ghana for Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, South Africa, 2005. Consultant, assisting Ministry of Education in the drafting of a bill for a new education law in Ghana, 2005. He had undergone extensive training in alternative dispute resolution skills and labor management techniques, and also coordinated many training sessions in alternative dispute resolution. Dr. Kwashigaah is a qualified mediator and arbitrator. He was a former president of the Ghana Association of Certified Mediators and Arbitrators. He was a Ghana National Reporter on the Constitution of Ghana for the Oxford Project on Constitutions of the World, and a current member of the Stellenbosch team on constitutional law in Africa. He was for several years member of the General Legal Council. He has served on other boards, including the Advisory Board of the Ministry of Justice, the Law Reform Commission, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. He currently serves as board member of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, Ghana. He is a member of the International Consortium on Law and Religion Studies and the president of the African Consortium for Law and Religious Studies. He enjoys farming and was adjudged the best citrus farmer in the Kuyapem North District in 2006. So, audience, your speaker.
Mr. Chairman, President of the Academy, Vice Presidents, Past Presidents, Fellows of the Academy, invited guests, my colleagues from the University of Ghana School of Law, students, let me take the opportunity to especially mention Nana Asante, who actually held my hands and wrote the application for me and supported my application for membership of the Academy. And I'm grateful for the encouragement. Left to me alone, I wouldn't have bothered to collect the papers. In fact, I now collected the papers and sent them to me and made sure that I filled them properly. Thank you, Nana. Mr. Chair, I wish to express my profound gratitude to the Academy for this opportunity to express my views on matters relating, very important matters for that matter, relating to the survival of this, our country, Ghana. This lecture is about the survival of this nation. It is intended to draw attention to the fast decline of the nation as a result of our failure to live by fundamental values that are necessary for the growth of a people. It is about the need for the scrutiny of the 1992 Constitution to identify the values inherent in it and to make proposals for the re-conscientization of the citizenry to restore the declining spirit of the nation. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, The title of this lecture is therefore Fidelity to Constitutional Values, Key to National Survival. I start from the premise that it is trite knowledge that Ghana is not what we used to be proud of as a people. That is, at least among African nations. We used to be proud of our cities compared to others for cleanliness. Ghana was where the people were friendly and tolerant to each other, where the environment was respected, and some of our cities even had the accolade garden cities, where our policemen and women were very polite and humane compared to those of other countries around us. And corruption was not as rampant as we knew it in other countries. It is beyond doubt that there has been a decline, and there is a very urgent need to arrest the decline by invigorating our national psyche through a return to our constitutional values. Mr. Chair, it is equally important that we appreciate the unspoken fact that the subjection of those who govern to constitutions is itself an indictment on human beings. It just simply means that we cannot trust human beings to govern without controls. And as the age-old saying of Aristotle goes, he who beats the law rule may be deemed to beat God and reason alone rule. But he who beats man rule acts an element of the beast, for desire is a wild beast, and passion perverts the minds of rulers, even when they are the best of men. Simply what Aristotle was saying is that it is dangerous to leave human beings to rule without laws controlling them, because there is virtually no difference between the human being and the beast. So if you leave the human rule to rule without control of laws, the beastly part of him will take over, and he or she will trample on the rest of us. So it is important that we must subject those who govern to rules, to laws. It is only if it is appreciated as such and strictly operated according to its values that constitutions would have the desired impact on the lives of its people. Constitutions are but words, but deep within them are values. And in their operation, those values must be made manifest. Although we have constitutions, unfortunately, human ingenuity is so adept that we can always devise strategies to undermine the express and inherent values of the Constitution through interpretation and application. The consequence is that we are forced from time to time to want to adopt the easy way out, which is proposals for amendment, to hopefully change our behavior. In other words, it is because there is a failure, when there is a failure for the Constitution to be applied in accordance with the values that imbued it, that we, the people, are forced to always ask for amendments, hoping that with new amendments, things will change. While not completely rejecting the need for some amendments over time, it is becoming obvious that the incessant calls for amendments are due to a failure to abide by the values of the Constitution. Now, what are values? Generally speaking, values are behavior patterns that are necessary conditions for the growth and survival of a people. Professor Venter of South Africa explained constitutional values to be, and I quote, deemed to set requirements for the appropriate or desired interpretation, application, and operationalization of the Constitution and everything dependent thereupon. It is the unquote. It is the values as appreciated by the operators of the Constitution that would guide the understanding and therefore the interpretation and implementation of the Constitution. When in 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous speech, I Have a Dream, he was indeed, in a manner of speaking, drawing attention to the values inherent in the Constitution, but which blacks were being denied. In his words, and I quote, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In other words, inherent in the Constitution was the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which should be accorded to all, irrespective of your color. Unquote. It is not impossible for the Constitution to be operated in a banal manner without regard to the underlying values that constitute its foundations. Constitutional values, therefore, impart substance to the bare words of the Constitution. Now, let's look at some historical examples of where failure of government resulted from failure to abide by values. The collapse, decay, and disappearance of nations was not unknown in history. The danger of such phenomena cannot be ignored even in modern times. Decay of states is still a possibility and cannot be ignored even if the possibility of a total physical extinction of the modern nation state is far-fetched. History, however, teaches us that moral collapse, which could be understood as a decline of generally accepted values, often led to state failure. In a revealing research by Blanton and others titled Moral Collapse and State Failure, a View from the Past, the authors examined 4 cases of state failure in pre-modern times and came up with the conclusion of a causality between state decline and an abandonment of core principles of state building that were fundamental to these polities. The authors concluded that moral failure in the affairs of the state often led to loss of confidence in the state, which brings in its wake social division, strife, and a reduced motivation to comply with tax obligations. Unquote. In the modern context, the enemy is not the outside invaders, but the enemy is from within. That is, we the people ourselves. A country that has no values is an empty shell, and a society that does not uphold its values, even if they have some, it's like an egg that is rotten within. State failure or decline is not impossible in these modern times. And Ghana is not immune to that possibility. And further, it is the failure to keep up our values as a nation that is the surest way to state failure. There are values inherent in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana that are designed to nurture and support a virile state. But it would appear that there is a failure to uphold these values, either because we are unaware of these constitutional principles or that we just have lost the conscience to abide by them. In the modern state, the decline of the state might not manifest as a complete disappearance of the state as an entity. This must be due to the nature of the international system in place, according to which international system somehow guarantees the integrity of sovereign states. In view of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, we can no longer be too sure, because it appears the possibility of one state wiping out another one could be something that could happen in the future. When a nation loses its soul, it, together with its people, become disoriented and despondent, with little edge and pride in living. So there were examples in pre-modern times when states failed due to the failure to abide by values that should prop it up. Now let's look at some examples of values in some constitutions of the world. Those of Kenya and South Africa, as compared to that of Ghana, which I compare those to that of Ghana. Unlike the constitutions of South Africa and Kenya, the Constitution of Ghana does not isolate some values and label them as such. Perhaps because the latter recognizes that the whole Constitution is about projecting standards that should guide every aspect of our very existence. The Constitution of South Africa started with a list of values. In fact, Section 1 of that Constitution provides as follows, and I quote, "The Republic of South Africa is one sovereign democratic state founded on the following values." That is, in the very first Constitution of South Africa, they started off by identifying those values that should guide their actions. A, human dignity, the achievement of equality and the advancement of human rights and freedoms. B, non-racialism and non-sexism. C, supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. D, universal adult suffrage, a national common voters' role, regular elections, and a multi-party system of democratic government to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness, unquote. So here, the South African Constitution, from the word go, set out the values that should guide all of them. That is just Section 1 of the Constitution. Then in a similar explicit terms, the 2010 Constitution of Kenya, also in its Section 10 or subsection 2, sets out the values of the nation as follows, and I quote, "The national values and principles of governance include," here you can see they also use the word values. A, patriotism, national unity, sharing and devolution of power, the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people. B, human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination, and protection of the marginalized. C, good governance, integrity, transparency, and accountability and sustainable development, unquote. So they went ahead and labeled these values. These listed values are representative of the political values where, as shall be explained below, the 1992 Constitution of Ghana went far beyond just political values to include social, economic, and cultural values. In other words, you'll notice that the values mentioned in the South African and Kenyan constitutions are mainly those that we may describe as political in nature, political values. But if you look at our own constitution, if you read our own constitution carefully, you will not see the word values. That does not mean that we do not have values. And indeed, if you go through our whole constitution, you will find values beyond the political, to include social, economic, cultural, and many more. So we can say that the 1992 Constitution, to all intents and purposes, was designed to build responsible citizenship out of Ghanaians. Now, we will take a critical look at the 1992 Constitution to identify the values, even though the makers of the Constitution did not isolate them as had been done in the South African and Kenyan Constitution. We will look through our Constitution step by step and see if we can identify those values. Before then, let us take a step back into history, because values, as you have them in constitutions, whether that of South Africa or Ghana or Kenya, are not just plucked from anywhere. They represent the historical experiences of the people. They are distilled from the experiences of the people over several years. So we can say that Ghana as a state has values in the Constitution, values which could be traced to our experience over the years. So Ghana, as we know it today, was an artificial creation by the British. It is indeed a patchwork. Before the British came, there was no Gold Coast. It became Ghana. The British came over, grabbed pieces of land all over the place, and at the time of independence, we had the entity that we now know as Ghana. So therefore, to create a nation out of its people, there's a requirement for a kind of engineering work which could be put together or glued together by our common and generally accepted values. In other words, what would it be that would put us together as a people, brought together by destiny, to live together in a nation that we now call Ghana? Those can only be values. Values common to all of us. Values that will recognize, that will make it possible for all of us coming together to live in harmony and in dignity. The values of a people are the sum of the experiences over the years. In the very famous words of Justice Sowa, former Justice of the Supreme Court of Ghana. A written constitution such as ours, and I'm quoting, a written constitution such as ours is not an ordinary act of parliament. It embodies the will of a people. It also mirrors their history. Account, therefore, needs to be taken of it as a landmark in a people's search for progress. It contains within it their aspirations and their hopes for a better and fuller life. Unquote. The Constitution is therefore not just an assemblage of words, but an expression of the aspirations and values of the people. They are intended to magnify the best of our nature as people forged together by historical events into a state. The constitutional values in the 1992 Constitution can therefore only be appreciated if we study the constitutional history of the country from at least the independence period, starting with the 1957 Constitution. A study of the various constitutional epochs from the time of independence till now shows that at every opportunity for change, we have sought to encode new values into our constitutional system. It is possible to identify three broad constitutional periods or epochs for this purpose. The first being the immediate post-independence era, when our primary objective was the consolidation of political freedom. For that purpose, any step that supported the stabilization of the government was acceptable. Respect for liberal democratic values was not acceptable. Political dissent was unacceptable, and human rights, particularly personal liberty and right to determine the governed, were of no relevance. The Preventing Detention Act was passed to protect the government from opposition challenge, and individual liberty could be curtailed at the whim of some other human beings. It became unconstitutional to belong to any other political party apart from the Convention People's Party. Free expression of sovereign will by the people through elections was made difficult through the introduction of the single-party system. The judiciary was emasculated. Those were the constitutional facts of the time. Then we had a military takeover, which also came with its own problems, particularly abuse of the rights of those who were associated with the Nkrumah regime. The experience of that period therefore fed into the values and principles projected in the subsequent 1969 Constitution, which essentially supported liberal democratic values and principles such as rule of law, separation of powers, and guarantee of fundamental human rights. This could be regarded as the second epoch, that is the period of the 1996 Constitution. That was when our values and principles were mainly reflection of the liberal democratic values and principles. Our experiences under the other regimes in between were of corruption and economic decline. Accusations of economic mismanagement and corruption became the explanation for the various military interventions into the constitutional life of the nation over an extended period. So therefore, when the opportunity came for the formulation of the 1992 Constitution, the values of probity and accountability, and the fact that the best guarantee of a sustained democratic system is economic prosperity of the people became the third category of values and principles that were added to those that had been formed during the first and second periods. With this background, when in 1968 the Constitution Drafting Commission was established, it was directed to produce a draft that would ensure that the three main organs of government would be separate and independent to provide for provisions that would guarantee the enjoyment of every individual in Ghana, quote, maximum freedom within the law consistent with the rights of others. That was the mandate that we were given. Of course, flowing from our experience under Nkrumah and the subsequent military regime. In the execution of the assignment of the commission, the commission understood its scope of or its mandate as follows, and I quote, that is, the commission itself took the view that it was expected to come out with a draft that would take care of the following. So, and I quote, we entered upon our assignment in the belief that with the experience of tyranny and oppression so fresh in our minds, so fresh in the minds of the people of Ghana, Ghanaians were determined to ensure that never again would the political sovereignty of our country be allowed to reside so precariously in one mind. We have tried to frame a constitution drawing its inspiration not from any doctrinal explanation, but from the principles of justice, fair play, decency, and morality, animating our traditional social institutions. That was how the commission itself understood its assignment. So with that as the philosophical basis of its work, the commission proceeded to put together a proposal that highlighted certain values that have continued in our constitution to today. Ironically, however, the commission itself thought that it was not prudent to make the constitution a charter setting out a comprehensive social and political philosophy in the form of preamble or directive principles. So if you look at the 1959 constitution, we didn't have directive principles. The commission was of the firm conviction that the constitution should be a legal document with the specific aims, I quote, to define the large outlines of the institutions of government and their powers, to set down in some detail individual and where necessary corporate rights, to forbid certain particularly abhorrent practices and institutions like preventive detention and the one-party system, which our recent history has proved most injurious. And last but not least, to define closely the legal instruments with which to enforce the foregoing. So that was how the commission saw its assignment, what exactly it was supposed to provide for. This task notwithstanding, the constitution that resulted had as its foundation certain democratic values. For instance, the confirmation of the sovereign authority of the people, the rule of law, separation of powers, protection of fundamental human rights, constitutional limitation of government. You notice that these values were also mentioned in the South African and the Kenyan provisions that we mentioned earlier on. So that is just a brief background to the forces that informed the values that we have in the 1992 Constitution. Now let's take a look at a more detailed look at the 1992 Constitution. As I said, our Constitution does not specifically mention values. It doesn't use the word values as we found in the Kenyan and the South African constitutions. But let's examine the 1992 constitution and see what we find. With the historical background we have mentioned, we can now examine the 1992 constitution to be able to understand and appreciate the values of which it was built. Values that we hope guide us in building a state that will satisfy the economic, social, political, cultural aspirations of the people. The starting point in the elaboration of the values is the preamble, which identifies the fundamental principles and values according to which we have decided to develop. Then comes chapter 5, which elaborately set out the fundamental human rights and freedoms that are guaranteed to every person in this country. Then follows the directive principles of state policy, which have been authoritatively pronounced as generally justiciable, but also consist of a plural of values. Indeed, I believe that the directive principles of state policy provide the philosophical principles that must guide all citizens and those who govern this country. In addition to all these positions I've mentioned, other values are identifiable from other positions of the Constitution. So you can see that unlike the other two constitutions, that is South Africa and Kenya, we did not set up to limit our constitution, our values in the constitution, just one position. We spread our values all over the place. That informs the view that our values are not just limited to physical values. Our values expand to cover economic, social, cultural, everything. Now, let's come through the Constitution step by step and identify some of these values. The first value immediately identifiable in the preamble is reference to God. In the name of the Almighty God, we, the people of Ghana, in the exercise of our inalienable rights, hereby give to ourselves this peace. So God first, and we the people exercising a God-given right, give ourselves the Constitution. Out of the Constitution comes duty and justice. So in that order, God, the people, the Constitution, then the various institutions of government. Now, the belief in God is therefore a central value in the Ghanaians. In fact, we pride ourselves as very religious. It is claimed that about 95% of Ghanaians are either Muslims or Christians. I don't know. That is what I saw somewhere. Indeed, if only 95% of the population were to abide by the messages of the holy men of this religion, that our Ghana will be a very, very perfect place to live in. In any case, for the avoidance of doubt, it is important to note that the Constitution proclaims the value of belief in God, belief in God, but not religion. The Constitution was not talking about religion. They are talking about belief in God. Religions are a creation of human beings. And the physical manifestation of religions, such as places of worship, dressing, appearances, and many rituals and doctrines associated with the various religions, are our own faith and should be kept out of the sphere of government. That is the view I have always said. And that at least for us in sub-Saharan Africa, government keep themselves out of issues of religion. Because we have enough problems already, not to add religious problems. Religion should be left for individuals. Let us concentrate government. So that is the first value we have, our belief in God. We say God is love. Love. So if indeed that value should be manifested by us, this country will be very beautiful. The next is the sovereign authority of the people, the value of the sovereign authority of the people. That sovereign authority of Ghana resides in the people. That is the 1+1. Now, if only the people really appreciate the magnitude of it, then we would demand respect in treatment and decorum in language when those who found themselves in authority are present. Because we are the sovereign. And we give them the authority to talk. They are not sovereign. We are sovereign. That is why every 4 years we have to come upstairs and plead for our permission. Continue and not drop. It is important that we appreciate this value as a exercise that our leadership. The next is the value of constitutionalism. In fact, the whole constitution as we have it is rooted on this very important value, which simply means limited government. That a government must operate under the constitution. That is to avoid disagreement. That is why we have various institutions, various structures in place, various processes in place to ensure that those who govern God, right? We the people, the Constitution defined the powers, created and defined the powers of government. Of course, a necessary element of this value of constitutionalism is the rule of law. Another is separation of powers. We also have fundamental human rights and freedom also as values. Then we have other values such as the integration of the people of Ghana and the prohibition of discrimination. The value of the conscious pursuit of democracy, value of the eradication of corrupt practices and abuse of power. For the sake of time, I am just mentioning these. These are all from the Constitution. They are all values that we can distill from the Constitution. Promoting a culture of tolerance, value of respect for rights, freedoms, and legitimate interests of others, value of protection of the family, the value to promote the prestige and good name of Ghana, the value to uphold and defend the Constitution and the law, to foster national unity and live in harmony with others, value to respect the rights and freedoms and legitimate interests of others, the value to work conscientiously in your lawfully chosen occupation, protect and preserve public property and expose and combat misuse and waste of public funds and property, value to contribute to the well-being of the community, to defend Ghana and render national service where necessary, to declare your income honestly and satisfy all tax obligations, and the value to protect that environment. All these are in the Constitution. All these are values that the makers of the Constitution that can believe that if we have to keep this country together as the best place on earth, then these are the values that we must work with. For the sake of time, let me speak just 4 of these various values for further discussion. The first one is the value that the exercise of our sovereign democratic authority. We have already mentioned that as a sovereign people, our sovereign authority devolves from God. That is a fictional part of our natural and inalienable right to establish the framework of government. Now, this fictional starting point provides the source of an unassailable authority inherent in the people. Beyond that fictional point is the reality that it is the people that constitute the source of authority of the Constitution. Practically, it was through the exercise of the sovereign authority of the people that the Constitution was created. And having been created, the Constitution subsequently finds various other powers. Article 1 was one of the Constitution which further confirms this authority, establishing the Republican foundation of the country. Republican foundation simply means that sovereign authority resides in the people, not the monarch. If it were to reside in the monarch, that would be the monarchical system like they have in Britain. We are sovereign, therefore republic. A prudent exercise of this sovereign others have what has become become a recipe for grand corruption, it derogates from an important value of the Constitution. The minority to flog the issue of corruption because research has established that Ghanaians have come to accept it as part of our culture. Before the last election, the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana conducted a research. And one question in the questionnaire was whether the issue of corruption would be a determining factor. And not surprisingly, the answer was that no. In other words, Ghanaians, we have come to accept that corruption has come to stay with us. So therefore, it will not influence us whether we decide to vote for it. Other factors may influence us, but not corruption. That, to me, is not consonant with the value of nationalism. Defeating corruption is very daunting. It's a very daunting task, particularly in a country where the majority of Israelis come to accept it as part of the national life. If we take the creation of a new Ghanaian, a new orientation to participation to the appropriate citizen education. The next value is considered is environmental protection. So the Constitution
in other time, talked about protecting the environment. And if any aspect of our life has demonstrated how valueless we are to this issue of environment. Here, we may be talking of cleanliness, environmental cleanliness, noise, and of course, the guarantee. Rwanda is acclaimed as one of the neatest countries in Africa. What stops Ghana from aspiring to be that? What values have they that we cannot think of? At the beginning, I mentioned that I used to be a very proud Ghanaian. At least when you consider African nation. When you travel, you are proud to identify yourself as a Ghanaian. But I think you now have to learn from others. The other is noise, particularly our religious groups. There is this popular case of the PROF road case, you must have heard of it, where two churches each camp, they had their churches together in one residential community and were disturbing the whole community. And one evening when one of the landladies went to tell them to tone down, he was booed out for daring to come and tell them the children of God not to disturb them. That is how valueless we have become, even those of us in the church. And as for Galamsey, it has completely exposed how easily this country could be sold by any of us. When there was a complaint about the invasion of our Galamsey piece by Chinese nationals, a former Chinese ambassador had this to tell us, and I quote, "We don't know where your gold is. We don't issue visas for Chinese people coming to Ghana. Ghanaians issue the visas. Ghanaians aid the Chinese to where they can find your gold. Why are Chinese not doing illegal mining in South Africa, where there is also a lot of gold? Because they cannot do that there. The locals don't support that illegality. It's an indictment as far as our values are concerned." He was right. He was right that it was an indictment. And I think we have to learn. The next, for the sake of time, the next is the importance of the family, which is what we are forgetting. The importance of the family. Remember, the Constitution talks about the family. The Constitution extols the importance of the family, and therefore, by implication, is valid. Indeed, Article 28 plus 1 plus B mandates Parliament to enact laws that are necessary to ensure the protection and advancement of the family as a unit of society. The family is perhaps the most fundamental unit of society. If you want the values to grow and be nurtured, that is where it is happening. Forget the family, destroy the family, the rest of society is gone with it. Indeed, there is this beautiful soul-stretching words of being one of the earliest Awamakia of Cameroon, which was very instructive. With your permission, let me read it out. It says, "My children," this was when he was about to die, and he was giving advice to those who were giving behind. "My children, never forget that the evil that My children, never forget that the evildoer is a nation ruiner. Admonish your children and set them up in all righteousness. Theirs is the state. For we live today, but tomorrow we are no more. Set them on the right path, that the nation will develop in strength, love, and bravery. Obedient children are ornaments to their parents and the nation. Sapphires and corals are they, and also pearls and gold. The adornment of the state. The wisdom that prospers a nation. It is the joy after this life. Truly, the one who lives well is the pillar of the state. Therefore, let the recalcitrant child repent. Let his life conform to the norm. The debtor must refrain from living above his means. Liars must learn to tell the truth. But for thieves, adulterers, and murderers, they have no portion or share in the wealth of the unlawful. My nation and these people shall never have anything in common unless they reform. But the child who refuses to heed correction, we shall find a place for him at the fifth landing stage. The fifth landing stage was a place no child will walk with. That was how we saw the importance of the family, that the children are the pillars of tomorrow, the foundation of tomorrow. So decay commences from the basic unit of society, the family. But we have sacrificed, Ghana, we have sacrificed the values of family for materialism. In fact, some of us are even very ready to literally sacrifice our children so that we can be rich and popular. And unfortunately, the youth who pride themselves as leaders of tomorrow see nothing wrong with cheating in examination. At times, even with support from the parents. With dysfunctional families, you can only expect a valueless nation. In other words, we need to take a critical look at our family. We need to revisit how we deal with our family life. Otherwise, there will be no nation called Ghana tomorrow. Now, those are the four specific areas I wanted to deal with. The 1992 Constitution gave us a detailed constitutional system and ideas that the makers hope will be good enough to guide us in our development of responsible citizens. The above few examples do not show that we have been successful at it, and the nation continues to suffer for it. Now, what is the solution? I've been talking about problems here and there, problems here. But we are not following our values. What should we do? To me, the problem is not so much in amending the Constitution. Yes, indeed. There are some provisions of the Constitution that will need amendment. But to me, that is not the main problem. The larger problem is in ourselves, our consciousness as citizens. It is as a consequence of a lack of fidelity to the values of the Constitution that we have the decline we now have, declining towards the level of a weak state. Robert Rothenberg, in a paper, identified the elements of a weak state. I don't want to, I have a quote here, but I don't want to go that. But unfortunately, most of the elements identified by him are simply present in Ghana. Corruption, abuse of political power, lack of commitment by citizens, all those elements are there. Conflict here and there, we have all those elements in that. So if you go by the standards we have established, we fit into that categorization. Now, my point is that fidelity to the values of the Constitution is the way out of the decline to restore the Ghanaian pride, which we enjoy some time back and independence. For this purpose, it is important for us to note that responsible citizenship cannot be taken as given. It must be taught and nurtured. There is therefore the need for a conscious and aggressive responsible citizen education of all segments of the society. This system of education would have to go beyond mere civic education or citizen education. It is generally accepted, for example, that even democracy is not a natural phenomenon for human beings, and therefore its values must be inculcated and continuously reinforced. According to Udonu, good citizenship as a quality is not inherent in people, but inculcated through education and observance. And in the words of Kofi Annan, I quote, "No one is born a good citizen. No nation is born a democracy. Rather, both are processes that continue to evolve over a lifetime. Young people must be included from birth. A society that casts off from its youth serves its lifeline." This is reinforced in the finding of Almond and Weber in a research covering 5 countries that I quote, "The development of a stable and effective democratic government depends upon more than the structures of government and politics. It depends upon the orientation that people have with the political process. It's upon the political culture. Unless the political culture is able to support a democratic system, the chances for the success of that system are slim." In other words, you can't take it for granted that we will be good citizens. We must consciously, make the effort to incorporate it in ourselves. Let's take a leaf from the Integrated Framework of Action on Education for Peace, Human Rights, and Democracy, as approved by the General Conference of UNESCO. As far as education for peace, human rights, and democracy is concerned, that is, they recognize that we cannot take as given or for granted that people will respect peace, respect human rights, and will conform to democratic principles. That, and I quote, education to cultivate this attitude. That there is a need to consciously establish a system to inculcate these values in the people. Then also the Council of Europe, taking into account its core mission, which is to promote human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, also came to the conclusion that, and I quote, education and training play a central role in furthering their mission. The emphasis here in both cases is the need for conscious efforts at incorporating these values in ourselves. Now, let's take a list further from how some other countries, have done it. Let's go to Rwanda. We know the history of Rwanda. So in order to confront and address one of the root causes of the 1994 genocide, Rwanda introduced what they call citizenship education to address misconceptions about citizenship that resulted in the intolerance among the tribal groups. So they recognized that there was a problem. How do you confront it? Through education. Citizenship education, a conscious effort at educating the people of the value of living together. Then in 2016, Rwanda developed a Vision 2050, which has 5 pillars. 1, human development. 2, competitiveness and integration. 3, agriculture for wealth creation. 4, urbanization and agglomeration. 5, accountable and capable state institutions. Taking from her history and most recent experience, the 3 pillars of the vision were to be sustained on a number of identified positive values, foremost among which was rebuilding institutions and ensuring security of all Rwandans. In other words, for Rwanda, we consciously took the step to develop values that were necessary for the new Rwanda. Therefore, it's not surprising that they are perhaps the best now in Africa. Now they developed what was called the triple choice, which embraces the following: staying together, being accountable, and thinking big. That was their value. Thinking big. The triple choice could be explained as follows. That is, quote, staying together is precondition of building a country without discrimination and fear among Rwandans. being accountable to ourselves constitutes a core value of taking responsibility of our destiny. And thinking big is helping the country to build the future we want. Inherent in these values are the additional values of self-sufficiency as a nation, which will ensure self-determination, as well as sustaining unity and reconciliation, which are key Rwandan values. It is not surprising that Rwanda is now taken as the model of governance and development. Who would be proud to be a Rwanda? I want to be proud by it. So I think we have to do that. And I strongly believe that if we go back to the Constitution, study the Constitution carefully, we will find enough values which can guide us in doing that. Now, let's go to China. You know, they may come here and do a lot of things I'm sure they will never do in their own country. In fact, in China, patriotic education is compulsory and was introduced following the 1989 Tiananmen Square student protest. It was explained that following the protest, the leadership realized the need to develop and promote new set of values. In order to get these new values integrated, the Chinese Communist Party introduced a patriotic education campaign in 1991, which was directed to re-establish Chinese people's political beliefs, loyalty to the Communist Party, and morality among the populace. I see how they have taken over the whole world, because they decided to follow certain values. Whether you like it or not, they are values, and it's working for them. Then Japan. Japan is another country that is a question of value very, very seriously. The Japanese are one of the most respectful and caring people in the world. That is their value. That is the result of the value. And this are taught from basic school. You might have seen when, was it the World Cup or what? Or the Olympics? One of these games. When they lost, even though they lost, after they lost, before they left, what did they do? You remember, they went on kicking the trash that they had created before they left. Ghana, what do you have there? I use the bottles to hit the referee for making us lose. Singapore, another one. Now, what all these countries have in common is that they consciously develop values that they apply, that they taught, and they have transformed their country. I will not go too much into Singapore, but just to give you, for the sake of time, but just to give you what their venerable leader, Lee Kuan Yew, said. Let me quote. He said, when they took over, they were so sickened by the level of corruption and despondency that was around. So according to him, we were sickened by greed, corruption, and decadency of many Asian leaders. we had a deep sense of mission to establish a clean and effective government. When we took the oath of office in June 1959, we all wore white shirts and white flags to symbolize purity and honesty in our personal behavior and public life. And Singapore, like Rwanda, is an example of what values to do to your country. Then in this 21st century, Singapore engaged in further reform, integrate growing technologies into schools. A push for patriotism contributed to curriculum that better acquainted students with their own history, strengthening civic commitment and highlighting Singapore's core values. In 1991, these values were clearly articulated by the Singaporean government as the shared values. One, nation before community, and society about self. That was one of their values. Nation before community, and society about self. Two, family as a basic unit of society. I was talking about the family. Family as a basic unit of society. Three, community support and respect for the individual. Four, consensus, not conflict. Consensus, not conflict. Our Constitution talks about what? Tolerance. Tolerance. Five, racial and religious harmony. Now, their belief was that once these values were formalized, it was decided that the best way to instill them in Singapore citizens was to teach them in schools. In fact, I would even, for Ghana, I think we reach a stage where the teaching should not be left only to the classroom. I think we all need to go back to the classroom to be taught our values. So, here you are, Rwanda, China, Japan, Singapore. They develop values, which we have, luckily, in our constitution. Now, like Rwanda and China and some other countries, the very survival of Ghana is threatened due to the loss of our national values and the level that necessitates a re-education of all of us in the pristine values that are embodied as embedded in the Constitution. That's how Rwanda and China came to a point, even Singapore, and found that to save the situation, we needed to develop values. I think Ghana, we have also reached that level where we need to sit back and reorient ourselves. In proposing citizenship education, I am not talking about civic education or citizenship education per se. But those may be limited to right to vote, human rights. No. We should be thinking of how, as responsible citizens, we should be able to relate to ourselves, respect the environment, generally. I would rather, therefore, suggest the phrase instead of civic education or citizen education, I would be suggesting responsible citizen education. Responsible citizen education, rather than just simply citizen education or civic education. The preference is intended to place emphasis on the idea of responsibility. It takes emphasis on responsibility for more effect. The Collins Dictionary simply explains responsible people as those who behave properly and sensibly without needing to be supervised. Another source adds that the responsible citizen abides by all the laws of the country, exercises the fundamental rights, performs expected duties such as casting a vote, paying taxes, protecting the country from corruption, keeping the environment clean, conserving electricity, water, and natural resources, and protecting public property. Taking the Ghanaian circumstance into account, it is responsible citizen education as an idea will make a deeper impact than just citizen education or civic education. As I keep on saying, the 1992 Constitution has provided values that are designed to create responsible citizens out of it. The Constitution already acknowledges citizens by the need for citizen education. Hence, the provision for the establishment of the National Commission for Civic Education. Yes, we have the NCCD. We also have the DRAG, that is the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. To do all this. But I would suggest that with these institutions, as we move on into this area of re-education, it must be responsible citizen education. Now, there will be the need for finance. If we are serious with it, then we need to commit the resources to it. And I will go on to suggest that having regard to the importance that we should accord to this need for education, citizens responsible for education, special funding should be introduced, especially for this citizen responsible citizen education. For that purpose, I propose that a proportion of the debt fund levy of 2.5%, for instance, 0.2% of that should be set aside in a fund to be applied for responsible citizen education. Alternatively, there could be an increase, I will support it, there could be an increase in the debt fund levy by 0.5% from the current 2.5, making it 3%. This fund should be put beyond the power of the Minister for Finance to act. It should not be possible for any Minister for Finance to decide to cut that fund. If it is for responsible citizen education, that is used for that purpose. And the benefit will be immense because an informed citizenry will fight corruption and waste, which is a good return for any investment in this country. When we are talking about responsible citizenship, we are thinking of a citizen that will be equipped with the capacity, with the willpower to readily take action when necessary. For instance, in defense against corruption and other abuses. Mr. Chair, let's pardon my audacity to call on the academy to consider it as one of its very important responsibilities to ensure that the values as we have in the country, the values that are necessary for the reversal of the decline of this nation, are properly packaged and properly disseminated to all of us. I think it fits into the purposes of the functions of the state. So I want to leave it with the chair for contribution. Mr. Chair, I've come to the end of it, and I hope I have explained why we have to go back to basics, why we have to take a deeper look at the Constitution. Even though we don't call it values, we are not called values as others have done. The makers of our Constitution have gone beyond the style of those other constitutions and provided for very, very rich array of values, which if we really follow them, it will be like those other ones, like Singapore, and the others. We used to be like that. So, Mr. Chair, as I always say, I used to be a very proud Ghanaian, but now I'm not too sure. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, let me take a minute to express my gratitude, my profound gratitude to those who supported sponsorship. The chairperson for the Academy for making the platform available to me. Then also the University of Ghana School of Law, my colleagues are here. Very grateful for the opportunity. And then IDEC, that is the Institute of Democratic Governance, headed by my good friend Dr. Emmanuel Akwete. Thank you for the support. And we have the New Times Corporation. Very grateful to the New Times Corporation. And of course, one of my former students, whom I consider a son, and a good friend also, Timothy Kene here, of Timothy Partners. Once again, I'm grateful to all of you, the Academy, my respected students. I don't want to mention this because when we start mentioning names, I will someone else. We have to go to them. Our students, we have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excellent talk. Let's give it a hand. Definitely, this is a very reflective fidelity to the Constitution. Basically, the idea that the Constitution brings out some values that Ghanaians should nurture and practice. That I think is the key idea, that we have enough values and ideas in the Constitution that can guide our resurgence or renaissance in the country. That we have some challenges ahead of us, and that we need to think about how to inculcate certain values into and that other societies that have done that have made very good progress. I like the 4 items that he talked about, namely sovereignty, the accountability and tolerance for each other, environmental protection, and the family as a basic unit of society. He also was careful to do a hierarchy of how Ghanaians perceive their world, namely God, the sovereignty, the constitution, rule of law, and so on. He has just given us a taste of what we can do with those ideas. Basically mapping constitution into values or taking values and building constitution out of those values. What struck me also was the idea that our constitutions have been more or less responsive to our experiences, let's say shortcomings in other constitutions, such as the immediate post-independence, dictatorship and authoritarianism, and then the liberal democracy, and then how one deals with constitution when you've seen economic decline. So he kind of mentions that our constitutions have not come out of thin air, that it's been in response to our experience. And I think that is very important. So as we stand on at this very platform today, and as we think of, let's say, constitutional amendment, which is not very much in favor of, or doesn't think that's a full solution, we need to be thinking about the kinds of, let's say, constraints that the current constitution has given us and how we can overcome those constraints. We could go on for a very long time because I think it's a very deep talk, and the idea of pulling values out of the constitution and putting values back into society, I think is a very commendable one. He wants us to find a way of operationalizing that. And there, I think, it's a bit of a challenge. Basically, the citizenship education arena. I think he needs to articulate that a little bit more so that we can have a path on that. But given the challenge with the academy ought to play a role in this transformational process. So with that, I thank our speaker, and I really appreciate all of you being here and for a very lively environment for the speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nti, our chair, for this evening, for those closing remarks. That brings us to the end of this evening's program. But before we leave, I'd like to just once again acknowledge our sponsors. I know Professor QUASHIGAH has already done so, so I'll just quickly mention them. The University of Ghana School of Law, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, Institute for Democratic Governance, Lawyer Kimati Kwenyehia of Kimati and Partners, and Mr. Pachi Edi of New Times Corporation. We thank them all very much for the sponsorship of this lecture. I'd also like to acknowledge our students of Accra Academy, Accra, Accra. Thank you all for being here with us. And to our invited guests, I thank you all for being here and listening to this lecture. I'd also like to thank the fellows, my fellow fellows, both here in person and online, for being part of this program. Thank you all very much. As we leave here, there will be refreshments served just outside the auditorium. So please make sure that you get something to eat before you leave. Thank you. Now, may I ask you to stand while the speaker and the chair leave? Thank you.